Welcome to Theoret Notes. Today's video is about Long Story Short. Long Story Short is a show that masterfully captures the beautiful, painful, and hilarious mess of family, and it does it all out of order. If you can stick with it through its intentionally fast-paced and uncomfortable first 2 episodes, you're in for one of the most rewarding character journeys on TV. This show earns every bit of the emotion it pulls from you. The show's biggest strength is in its structure. Long story short, it's proudly non-linear. It jumps between the 90s, the 2000s, and the present day, not to confuse you, but to make you understand. You'll see a character react strongly to something in the present, and then the show will jump back 2 decades to show you the origin of that very mood. It's a brilliant way to illustrate how a comment from your childhood, a forgotten betrayal, or a moment of neglect can shape who you are today. It forces you to pay attention to the interactions because everything is connected. So who are the Schwoopers? To understand the story, you must first meet the family. Naomi, the matriarch, a hurricane of love, criticism, and unchecked anxiety. Her love is ferocious and all-consuming, but it is almost exclusively expressed through food control and a desperate need for her family to reflect her own ideal of perfection. Elliot, the father, is laid back, often a clueless optimist. He plays the good cop to Naomi's bad cop, often diffusing tension with a joke, but his avoidance of conflict often allows the family dysfunction to fester. Avi, the oldest child, burdened, resentful, and bearing the deep psychological scar of being Naomi's first parenting experiment. His entire life is a quest for the approval he knows he will never authentically receive. Shira, the middle child, is the truth teller. She's witty, vocal, and painfully aware of the family's absurdity and dysfunction. She is the audience surrogate, armed with eye rolls and cutting one-liners that mask a deep yearning for connection. Yoshi, the youngest, a decade younger than his siblings, he's a free spirit, almost like an only child from a different dimension. He experiences the family's chaos from a unique, often oblivious, and sometimes more insightful perspective. The show's narrative structure is its greatest innovation. It's a puzzle. It's an emotional mystery. It's a roller coaster, and it's not a gimmick. It's the point. To understand Naomi, we must not just start with her children, but start with her own childhood. In 1959, in a loud, chaotic household, a young Naomi tries to speak, but is constantly drowned out. Feeling invisible and desperate, she does something drastic. She hurts herself, and it works. She gets the attention she craved. This is tragic. It's a formative blueprint for her entire adulthood and motherhood. The only way to be heard in her mind is to create a catastrophe. This is a key that unlocks her entire character. So, I started with Naomi's childhood because I want to make this video as chronological as possible, and the first imprint to the Schwoopers is, of course, Naomi's childhood. So now we're going to move on to the family dynamics. In 1991, a young Avi, desperate for social acceptance, is so focused on being cool that he remains completely oblivious as his sister Shira is actively drowning in a pool. This isn't just a childhood incident or accident, it's a foundational trauma. For Shira, it's a core memory of neglect, and for Avi, he doesn't even really remember it, but it's affected his sister, and she's continued to internalize this into present day. In 1996, while driving home from Naomi's mother's funeral, Naomi is consumed by criticism of the service. When a young Avi tries to understand and process the Jewish relation to death, Naomi challenges this and argues that Jewish people do not believe in a heaven or a hell. This isolates Avi. I think it's a first indication of Avi's growing indifference and also lack of relation to Judaism. To him, he feels like an outsider in his own culture. Elliot tries to make a joke out of it, and this is classic Elliot. Whenever something in the family happens, whenever there's a discussion being brought up about, tradition or religion or just family, he often tries to soften the blow, but sometimes that can even be neglectful because rather than answering the questions that the kids propose, he's trying to make a fun and light-hearted gesture about it because he knows Naomi is going to go a harsher route. In 1997, the family is having a game night, and Avi deeply wants to make his family understand the game that's also dear to him, but again, his family dismisses it and is loud and does not understand him or try to understand why this game is important to him and why he wants to play the game the right way rather than, just making things up. In 1998, Shira and Baby are shooting basketball, and Yoshi wants to hang out with Shira but feels excluded because he's much younger than Shira and Baby. This is a growing dynamic between Shira, Avi, and Yoshi. Yoshi constantly feels like he's being excluded from the family because he's much younger and cannot relate as much to his siblings. In the year 2000, Aunt Sylvia passes away, and their uncle, Uncle Barry, invites Naomi and Avi to come collect some things. He kind of says that they can have whatever, but when Naomi sees her mother's brooch, her mother who passed away in 1996, she asks for the brooch, but rather than giving it to her, Uncle Barry now says that he wants to keep the brooch. This deeply hurts Naomi because the only thing that she has of her mother now is the brooch. And, back in 1996, she was very upset by the fact that her mother's funeral service was not to her liking, and now that she wants to remember her mother with the brooch, Uncle Barry, rather than giving her the brooch, does not give it to her and says that he wants to keep it even though it's not his. In 2002, we find out that Shira and Baby are actually in a relationship. They are friends with benefits. And, Naomi's constantly worrying about Shira bringing boys home, but she should be worrying about Shira bringing Baby home. The JCC is having an event to celebrate Naomi, and the whole family, the kids are kind of perturbed because they did not see the Naomi. The people at the JCC and outsiders see Naomi. They do not get that kind, open, and nice Naomi. They get a much stricter, critical, and almost overbearing Naomi. The kids are kind of bored of this event, and Shira was going to possibly go to prom with her friend Baby, but instead has to go to the event to, honor her mother. Avi at this event is constantly at dismay, and he's really surprised by how much people love Naomi, because that's not the Naomi that he gets, and he tries to see how people could love Naomi so much because he does not really love his mother that much. Or maybe he does love her. I would take that back. I think he loves her, but he just does not understand her and feels often disconnected from her. Even if Shira had said she wouldn't go to the prom with Baby, she ends up going anyways, and she sees Baby with another guy, and this hurts her, and this marks the end of their friendship because Shira thought that they were, friends with benefits and that they were gay together, but it turns out that Baby is actually bisexual. The first episode of the series is actually set in 2004, and the other events that I just described happened much later on because, again, this story does not go in chronological order, and I do not think it should because the way that they patch these things together between timelines makes a lot of sense and really shows intergenerational and how the past can bleed into the present. So in 2004, Yoshi is finally getting his bar mitzvah, and it's very dysfunctional. Avi now has a girlfriend, he's in college, his girlfriend's name is Jennifer, and there's clearly a lack of disconnect between Naomi and Jennifer because Jennifer is not Jewish, and Naomi believes that Jennifer is taking Avi away from Judaism without realizing that her son never really, ascribed to the religion in the first place. Yoshi is very stereotypically the young child. I mean, he's kind of babied in a sense. When it's time to do the 13 candles for the bat mitzvah, Naomi decides to include Jennifer in as the 13th candle for the bat mitzvah, and this deeply upsets Uncle Barry, who he lost his wife a couple years ago, and he gets absolutely upset that he wasn't able to light the candle when an outsider like Jennifer was able to light the candle. He completely forgot that back in 2000, when Naomi had asked for her mother's brooch, he did not give it to her. I don't think Naomi did this on purpose, of course, just to get back at him, but how dare he didn't give her mother's brooch. Why would he be entitled to light a candle at the bat mitzvah? So in 2006, during a parent-teacher conference, Yoshi is diagnosed with a variety of neurodevelopmental disorders, ADD, dyslexia, and many other things. Naomi does not want to naturally accept that Yoshi just has these disorders and, tries to find a reason to explain these disorders, and they come up with the pacifier shirt syndrome. Of course, this is not science, and, the kid has developmental disorders. They just have it. There's nothing that, not nothing, but it's more so natural than not that she's clearly trying to find a reason as to why it's not natural. In 2012, Shira and her later wife, Kendra, meet in a store checkout while arguing. They meet arguing about Rosh Hashanah, and at first they're arguing about checkouts, but then they realize that they're both Jewish and they kind of start to flirt. I kind of want to give a little background context on Kendra. I know that I kind of skimmed through her, but she also gets a backstory. We first meet Kendra in 1993 at her birthday party. It's clear that her family is wealthy, but her father is very distant and sees his daughter as a delicate princess, when in reality she's a tough, determined skater girl. This disconnect between her and who she is expected to be forces her into being a perfectionist workaholic, a trait that defines her adult life and also resembles her father. Then we fast forward to 2007, where Kendra is now working at a skater rink, the same skater rink where she was taken when she was a kid by some employee at her birthday party when she looked like she wasn't enjoying the princess party that her father had paid for her for. Kendra is a very effective worker, and she's able to connect but also encourage her co-workers to work really hard. Kendra's effective working style is noticed by the higher-ups in the company who want her to join a management team. But before we get into that, Kendra is currently dating someone named Jax, who is a hostage negotiator, and she kind of sucks at her job, but I find her very funny. So Kendra's noticed at her job, and after she gets a call while at dinner with Jax, she decides to break up with Jax basically, and she decides that she's going to prioritize getting this management position. Kendra is a workaholic who puts work above everything, similar to her father. Her father constantly works, and he thinks that just because he's constantly working, he can buy everything for his kids. That's enough. The hiring manager truly supports Kendra and wants to see her win. The people that Kendra has to compete against are people who went to top schools for business management, and they kind of dismiss Kendra's ability and see her as like a token or a diversity hire because she's a floor worker and not a management worker who went to the college for management and is now like applying for a job at the management office. So they dismiss her, but Kendra is determined to prove herself after she meets her brother David, who gives her advice on not selling herself short. But in order to not sell herself short, Kendra starts to indulge in drugs and, just not taking care of herself because she wants to really ace and do really well in this program and prove to all the people who, didn't believe in her that she could do well. All this workaholicness ends up backfiring when Kendra's father gets, diagnosed with a heart attack and he has a stroke and he's in the hospital. Kendra doesn't want to leave her father's side until he wakes up. Kendra's father is not waking up. This starts to bother Kendra, and eventually she ends up having a stroke or a heart attack of her own, and rather than being able to go to work and make the management program meeting, she ends up sleeping overnight. When she gets back to work, the co-workers and the management team are confused and they were, about to let her go from the management program. But Kendra says that she was actually celebrating Rosh Hashanah, and that makes the management team even more encouraged to hire her because they didn't know that she was Jewish. Kendra wasn't Jewish before this, but she became Jewish because of, her workaholic nature and because she found something that truly made her feel calm. Kendra has no personality outside of working, similarly to her father. And when she, used Judaism as an excuse to, not get fired from her program, she actually went on to study Judaism and learn about it, and it resonated deeply with her, and she converted to Judaism. So we're going to move back into the Schwooper family. In 2013, Yoshi, now 22, lives wild and free as an ambulance driver, but after crashing into a bunch of trucks and losing his job, he moves back in with his parents, and his mom tries to get him a new job, but Yoshi meets an eccentric businessman who lures him into an MLM mattress scheme. Yoshi sells a bunch of mattresses, but he actually, at first he doesn't do very well, but he starts to do amazingly, and this is because Elliot supported him. Naomi did not want him to engage in this and wanted him to get a regular job, but Elliot supported him and he ended up doing well. But the caveat to Elliot telling him that he can just do whatever is that Yoshi ends up taking on more that he can actually handle, and that leads to a huge problem of exploding mattresses. And one thing that I noticed about Naomi in this episode is that at first she was very dismissive of Yoshi, but once Yoshi started doing good, she kind of started acting like she was the one who encouraged him, and then after he started doing bad, she was kind of like being a "I told you guys, I told you so." She kind of flip-flops. In 2014, after some time of dating and getting married, Sheer and Kendra are looking for sperm. They go to Avi to ask for sperm, but he is kind of hesitant. Avi and Jen are now married and have Hannah, who is absolutely amazing. They are at her play recital, and Jen and Avi are clearly having some issues, possibly because of their cultural and religious difference. Jen has never quite fit into the Schwooper family, especially because Naomi always makes it a point that she's other. And that cultural and religious difference has started to get to Jen. When Sheer and Kendra ask Avi about using his sperm, he's completely uncomfortable and they start to fight and argue. In the end, Avi actually does want to donate his sperm, but because he made such a big deal and tried to make himself feel special, rather than just honoring or helping his sister, Sheer decides that she does not want to use the sperm any longer and instead goes to ask Yoshi, who automatically agrees to it. Also in 2014, there's a scene of Avi and Naomi at a park watching Hannah play, and she constantly berates him and compares him to other people, never saying that she's quite proud of him. And I think that this just shows the relationship between Naomi and Avi. Their conversations are never really conversations, but more so Naomi talking about how she doesn't think Avi is doing good enough. Rather than telling her son that she's proud of him or that she thinks that he's doing great in life, she kind of dismisses what he's doing and tries to force her way of life onto him. In 2015, Yoshi, Shira, and Kendra are at their house or whatnot. Yoshi is at Shira and Kendra's house, and they're continuing to talk about the process of donating sperm. In 2014, Kendra and Shira asked Yoshi, and now they're finally trying to go along with the process. Yoshi, of course, is very excited. He wants to contribute to his sister and her wife's growing family, but Yoshi ends up meeting Baby. Baby is Shira's ex-girlfriend / friend with benefit. And in this process, Yoshi and Baby start to get pretty close, and Yoshi ends up using the sperm that he was supposed to use for Shira on himself. So he goes to Avi to talk about this, and Avi offers that they could use his sperm, but when they go to tell Shira about this, Shira is upset and decides that she would rather not use neither of her brother's sperm, meaning that they would use another donor or a private donor or whatnot. I think this kind of shows how even when the Schwoopers try to do good things for one another, it always messes up, because rather than just being direct about whatever they want to do or say, they don't really acknowledge things very much. And when they do acknowledge things, it's quite too late. In 2019, Avi, Jen, and Hannah have come to visit Naomi and Elliot. One thing that I noticed is that she says that she loves Avi and Hannah and practically everyone else who comes through the door, but when it comes to Jen, she just tells her that she likes her job or how's her job doing. Again, this is a form of Naomi constantly alienating Jen, and I guess it makes a way for their divorce later on. The whole reason for this meeting is to discuss Yoshi and an intervention for him, because Naomi believes that he might be an addict of some kind. But the reason for this meetup is more complicated than that, because it's actually Elliot and Naomi's, anniversary, and she has to make a big deal out of something in order to encourage the kids to come. The Shira, Avi, and Yoshi all talk about how their mother constantly has to make a big deal out of things in order to get attention. And this is very clear because, as I said, in 1959, we saw that what Naomi learned is that in order to get attention from others, she must hurt herself, or she must make the biggest deal out of something. Otherwise, she won't get attention and she won't be acknowledged. It's like if she's not the center of attention, she becomes invisible, and that is something she has internalized and has not grown from. Long story short, during this intervention, they find out that Yoshi is not actually an addict but has converted into Orthodox Judaism, and Naomi is completely upset with this at first, and she makes this a big deal about how her children are constantly rejecting whatever she wants for them, rather than being happy that Yoshi has finally found something that gives him meaning and purpose. Eventually, she does come around after Avi has a huge argument with her, and Shira kind of, constantly tells the truth about the family situation. So eventually Naomi does come around and supports Yoshi the best way that she can possibly support Yoshi. We then jump to 2021. Kendra and Shira have finally had kids. Their dynamic is so fun. I actually really like their family, and it's actually very cute. I think Shira and Kendra make great co-working parents, and they're trying to get their kids into a specific school. They want to impress the other parents at the school potluck. But when Shira tries to make some buns, she struggles to make these buns because she can't get the recipe quite right. And we learn that this is because Naomi has passed away, and she's fixated on getting the buns made the exact same way that her mother had made them. But this is difficult because her mother is gone and she doesn't quite have her recipe book. But she calls Elliot and eventually gets the correct recipe book and makes the buns. And I guess this is Shira's way of dealing with her own trauma and dealing with the fact that her mother is finally gone. They never quite get closure because Amy dies during COVID, so the family never really got together to celebrate her death or whatnot. And Shira is finally learning to let go, but also appreciate her mother for what she was and what she wasn't. Continuing in 2021, Hannah has grown up so much. She's currently a high school student. And even though Avi rejected his Jewishness, Avi does not want to really engage with Judaism. Hannah has come to love the culture and her possibly wants to have a bat mitzvah, but this bat mitzvah is more as a metaphor for the fact that she has no friends, and her only friend is actually her father, Avi. We also learned that Avi and Jen have now divorced, and I saw this coming from a mile away. I think we all saw this coming from a mile away. Avi and Jen do have a really great co-parenting relationship, and Jen gives great advice to Avi about letting his daughter be his daughter and not just his friend. Avi and Hannah are very close, and that is beautiful, but at the same time, them being so close does not leave much room for Hannah to find friends of her own age. I think this episode, the whole wolf episode, deserves a whole episode on itself, so I don't want to go too much in it, but long story short, there are wolves in the school, and I think it's a metaphor for, conflict, but there are wolves in the school, and Avi joins joins a PTO organization that's actually just a conspiracy theory parent organization. And through this process of embarrassing his kid and being a dad for once and not just the cool friend, Hannah finally makes friends. But again, this wolf episode, it deserves an episode of its own, so I don't want to go too much into it. After a long time of never really getting together, as a variety of different factors like COVID or whatnot, the family kind of gets together in 2022 after Uncle Barry, the guy who wouldn't give Naomi her mom's brooch, passed away. The family discusses how Uncle Barry, a very weird and kind of mean man, gets to have a proper funeral while Naomi only got a Zoom call because she passed away due to COVID. The family finally connects and bonds over Naomi and also a lot of the trauma, the dysfunction, and the beautifulness of the family. While at the funeral, there's a whole bunch of shenanigans that happen, but I don't think it's really productive. The main thing that matters is the fact that when Yoshi chooses to leave the funeral because he hasn't come to terms with his mother's death, nor does he want to go to another funeral, the whole family decides to go and meet him where he stopped overnight. And when they meet together, they have a conversation about the past, Naomi, and they finally make a decision that they're going to be productive with their relationship and not just meet for funerals and sad things, but actually get to meet each other and see each other as more as a family and not just occasionally, we go to funerals together. I think the season ends very well, and I know that I kind of just skimmed through and just went over all parts in, different orders, but I'd like to make more videos on this show because I think it's just so dynamic and it's so beautiful, and I hope that, we get more than 2 seasons. I know it's confirmed for 2 seasons, but I would love to see 3 seasons, 4 seasons, 5 seasons. It's amazing. It's not quite Bojack, but it's something that I can get down with. Now, I know I didn't go through all the points and I didn't give all the spoilers, but it's because I want to encourage people who haven't seen this show to go ahead and watch it because it's fun. And even though, it starts off pretty iffy in the beginning, I would say, it gets really good and it gets to a point where you're like, I'm really rooting for these characters and I actually don't hate them. Even Naomi, even though I consider her, a dysfunctional mother, I still find a reason to like her because I know she's just trying her best, but sadly she doesn't know how to be a good parent. So thank you so much for watching this video and I hope to see you in the next one.